Thank you, Almina. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Is everybody feeling blessed?
Yes.
And you're not going to keep it to yourself, right? You're going to spread it around. Ken, I love the recitation of those various scriptures that speak clearly of Thanksgiving. But in my digging for good stories for Thanksgiving week sermon, it's like I found one that wasn't on that list. But that's okay, because it's God's word. And this is a story that's packed with the idea and the concept of gratitude and generosity and thankfulness. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets, cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know he revered the Lord. But now the creditor are coming to take my sons as slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? What do you have in the house?" She replied, "Your servant has nothing there at all, except one small jar of oil." Elisha said, "Go around and tell all your neighbors and ask them for empty jars. Not just a few. Go inside with your sons and shut the door and pour into each of those jars oil, and it's full, set it aside." She left him, went home and shut the door with her sons, and they brought the jars to her that they had gathered. And as they were filled, she set them aside until there were no more jars. And she said, "Quick, go get some more jars." But they said, "There are no more." And at that point, the oil stopped. Then she went back to Elisha and said, "The oil has stopped flowing." And he said, "Now go, sell the oil and pay your debts. Your sons and you can live for what is left." This may seem at first glance like a tragedy, a trauma for one woman. But what this is an opportunity of generosity for a whole community. A community perhaps not unlike yours. Spontaneous generosity. Last night, I experienced spontaneous generosity. I was down in Ocean Beach with a bunch of storytellers. Yesterday was a day called Celebration. That's a international day of storytelling. And where storytellers all over the world gather together and share stories with one another. And we were hosted at Bethany Lutheran Church down in Ocean Beach for our celebration. 8 of us were on program to share stories. And afterwards, we decided we'd go out and get something to eat. And I was walking with Teresa, the wife of one of the storytellers, and we walked by a gentleman who was adjusting his folding chair on the sidewalk as he was settling down for the night. And we spoke to him and asked him how he was doing. And we went on to eat, and then after we ate and chatted up a bit and tell a few more stories as storytellers will do, we started heading back with our leftovers, in the little cardboard boxes they put them in after you're in the restaurant. And when we got to that same man again, Teresa stopped and said, "Are you hungry?" He looked at it and said, yeah. Would you like some dinner? It's leftovers. It's Thai food, and I'm a vegetarian, but it's pretty good. Would you like that? He said, she sat up and said, yes. She gave it to him. Spontaneous generosity. I said, why'd you do that? She said, I just have to let my light shine. When God has blessed you, it's not meant just for you. Continually, as you read throughout the scriptures, story after story, passage after passage, you will find where God blesses a person, and rarely is it for that person. That person who has been blessed, yes, they are helped. But it starts a chain reaction of blessing someone else, of passing it on. My goodness. What are some lessons we learn from this story about Elijah? One thing we find out, as I think a lot of you know and why you're here, is that it's wise and good to be part of a faith community. I mean, this woman had a problem. Her husband died. Some of you have been there recently. And immediately, I saw today, spontaneous generosity. Because God's blessing you had, and you saw your sister is now in need, and immediately, what can we do today? What can we do right now? How can we share the love? You get it. God, I love you guys. Because you get it. You don't just understand it. You live it. You do it. I mean, you know that she's part of Israel, the chosen people, because the story's in the Bible. And Elisha is one of the prophets of God. But not only that, she's part of an Israelite. Her husband was part of a very special community, the school of the prophets. That meant her husband had the responsibility of bringing words of hope, encouragement, and correction and challenge from people, from God, to the people in the community. I mean, he had this gift of God, and he wanted to develop this gift, so he had dedicated himself to being in school with Elisha, who was one of the prophets. Remember, Elisha was the student of Elijah, the prophet. And Elijah had blessed him with a double portion of what he had. And Elisha is continuing on, getting blessings from God and passing blessings on through the school of the prophets. And this man who had been a good part of the company of the prophets, he had now died. And most of us, most people, we usually will die with some type of indebtedness. So the wife is at this point realizing, I'm not alone. I'm an Israelite. I am a follower of God, of Jehovah, of Yahweh. And my husband's part of the community of prophets. And they have a leader named Elisha. I think I'm going to go. And by her going to Elisha, this woman's personal tragedy, this woman's personal trauma became a community opportunity. You know, if we would just think about this story and say, how often have I let my pastor or elder or deacon or the pastoral ministry, the healing ministry, the visitation ministry, how often have I let them be a blessing to me? How often have I let them know how much I appreciate what they do, that I will say, I have a need and I believe God can use you to help me. Sometimes we just don't want to ask. And I like Elisha's challenge. So, well, how can I help you? He wanted the lady to explain and clarify, what are your expectations? We always need something, but are our expectations when we come to ask for help, are they realistic? Have we thought it out? What do we need? What do we want? How can we be blessed so that we can indeed bless others? God, throughout the Bible, he's always having people say, what do you have? Remember Moses getting that task? Well, how can I do all that stuff? What's that in your hand? Well, it's a stick. He said that stick of his became a snake, which ate up the snakes of the enemy. But also that stick also became the source of power to divide the Red Sea, because God worked through that. God had already given him what he needed. God often has given us something. And we say, I have nothing. But God's given us something that he can call us to put into his service. Think about the thousands of people that Jesus fed. He said, disciples, find some food here. What's here? There's food in this crowd. You got this one kid who had this little lunch. And he brought it to the disciples, and the disciples brought it to Jesus. And from that, what that little lad had, it fed them. And they had leftovers. Expect the miracles when we start following things. Sometimes, it's hard to ask for help. But what Elisha did right here in this story, he told her, go to your neighbors. All of them. Ask them for empty jars. Because Elisha, as a man of God, understood that they have something, emptiness in their life. They have something that can be useful to you. They have something that will be even benefit to them if they give it to you. Go to them, all of them, not just a few. Don't be ashamed. Ask. That's why you're in community. Remember, I think it's not the last one, but a few times past, I preached about isolation and how important it is for us to be in connection with one another. That's God's plan, to bring us out of the isolation and the rejection of sin and desperation, and bring us into a community of hope, of healing, and of cooperation. Let us all be part of the process, because we have empty jars. Let's just sit around. We have extra time to spare. We have extra money. We have space. We have opportunity. Call us to look and see, I've got an empty jar. What are you going to do with it? I don't know, but I can use it. Here it is. And so she has all these jars. And God miraculously begins to fill these jars up. You see, there was clearly a shortage of oil in this community, which the man of God was aware of. Since now that they're filled, the people are willing to buy back the oil that's in the jars that they provided. Because they said, that jar was empty because I needed oil. And I didn't know where I could get oil. And I'm glad to help you out with some cash to meet your things if I get my jar back and the oil. Because I can use this. You see how God has set things in motion? Everybody in the community is now benefit from this one woman's personal tragedy, from her loss. Because they were invited to become part of the community, share what they have, and in their emptiness. We all have empty jars. We all have something that God can touch and heal and fill and repair. And in doing that together with one another, what a strong community we become. What a great witness we are to the unknowing, to the confused, the brokenhearted, the unbeliever, the skeptic. When they see that in spite of all the challenges and the heartbreak and the loss and the sacrifices, we are still smiling and we are still caring for one another, interceding in prayer, visiting, thinking, how can we help the children in Anza? How can we help people nearby? How can we support people far away? How can we, through the various missionaries that are supported by this group of people, are empty jars being filled? And we realize that lonely people know there is a God. There is a God who loves. There is a God who cares. These neighbors provided empty jars. They didn't think they could help. They probably said, well, I don't know what to do. Yeah, I heard about her husband, but what could I do? But now they have direction because they were chose to be obedient to the direction of the person of God who put there. Shut the doors. What? Now, why is that important? There are some things everybody doesn't have to know. There are some miracles and some moments of healing and some comfort that God will do just one-on-one or for a very select few. For this woman, it was her and her sons. For a moment, they needed to close the door and start feeling those oils and start seeing God work in their lives. So they can go out and meet their neighbors and say, okay, now that this has happened, let me tell you what the Lord has done. Let me tell you of the benefits of being with Christ. Let me tell you of the joy of really knowing Thanksgiving's every day. I heard somebody say that this morning. It's every day. It's not just one day. Yeah, it's a big national holiday. It's a day off. It's games. It's a parade. We stuff ourselves. But more importantly, other people are helped. Other people are fed. Other people are giving hope. Because we're blessed to be a blessing. Expect miracles. People say he doesn't do it like he did it. Well, maybe it's hard to emulate today the miracles we see in the Bible, but he works. Provisions are given. And many of you all have those stories of needing a certain amount of money and somehow a check comes in the mail for just that amount. I don't know how it happens, but God does. God provides. Of having had an illness for years and nobody can seem to go, but you make a move, you got a new doctor, and all of a sudden somebody sees a solution. God has a way. If we continue to trust and obey, and the community comes together and celebrates. Can you imagine how that community must have felt for that woman whose husband died? Now, all of a sudden, they would realize my empty jar is full. When I thought I had nothing, I had something. I have oil. I've helped this widow. I've helped her stay strong in the community. I've kept her sons from being taken away as slaves. Because in that day and time, if you couldn't pay the bills, you just wouldn't do credit. You became a slave. The joy in that community of helping someone, of healing someone, of encouraging someone, of supporting someone, and also saying, look, I have my empty jar that's now full, and I have oil that I now need. God has provided. God has provided. Once again, he has provided. So we all can say, to God be the glory for great things he has done. He's given salvation, but that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning of the walk of maturity, the walk of holiness, the walk of effectiveness, the walk toward being fully devoted disciples of Christ. And as long as we're living, we have the opportunity to keep growing and giving and have that attitude of gratitude and that spontaneous generosity and bless others because we've been blessed. How often are you the only one smiling? But you keep smiling, and other people in the room will say, well, maybe she's crazy, maybe he's crazy. But then they'll smile at you. Get it out there. You make the difference because Christ makes you different. You make the difference because Christ made you different. You're blessed to be blessed. Go out and practice a spontaneous generosity. Amen. So we will let it be. Get that attitude of gratitude that provides the generosity, that breeds generosity. And let there be an outbreak of spontaneous generosity whenever you walk into a place. God bless you real good. Happy Thanksgiving.